Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up, covering the week ending August 9th, 2024. Your host this week is Neil Bisson, a retired intelligence officer with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service and the director of the Global Intelligence Knowledge Network. With over 25 years of experience in law enforcement and intelligence, Neil brings you the most compelling and up-to-date news on national security, foreign interference, espionage, terrorism, and everything spy-related. This week, we've got some incredible stories you won't want to miss. From breaking developments in terrorism plots in Vienna to the arrest of a Canadian spy for the Chinese, we've got you covered with in-depth analysis that will keep you informed and on the edge of your seat. But before we dive into today's stories, I want to take a moment to highlight the vital role your support plays in sustaining this podcast. By subscribing to the Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or simply asking your smart speaker to play it, you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy our content, please leave a comment, give us a rating, and share it with your friends and colleagues. Your feedback and support are crucial in helping us continue to deliver high-quality, insightful content. You can also support the show by becoming a supporter at buzzsprout.com/2336717/support or https://buymeacoffee.com/GIKN. Your contributions are greatly appreciated and help ensure we can keep bringing you these important insights. Thank you for your support. Now, let's dive into this week's episode of the Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up with your host, Neil Bisson.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me for another exciting week in the world of international intelligence. In our first story, we're diving into a significant development in the intelligence community. Our focus is on a recent article entitled Former CSIS Director David Vigneault Joins U.S. security firm Strider Technologies. For those of you who may have not seen the news, David Vigneault, the former director of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, has taken on a new role in the private sector. Let's break down what this means and why it matters. David Vigneault stepped down as the director of CSIS in July, including a 7-year tenure marked by intense scrutiny and high-stakes challenges, particularly surrounding foreign interference in Canada. His move to Strider Technologies, a US-based security firm specializing in protecting organizations from state-sponsored threats, signifies a notable shift from public service to the private sector. At Strider, Vigneault will take on the role of Managing Director of the Global Intelligence Unit, where he will engage in both private and public sector organizations and drive forward research and development. From an intelligence perspective, this transition is quite significant. Vigneault's deep expertise and experience will undoubtedly bolster Strider's capabilities. His insight into state-sponsored threats, particularly those from China and other foreign actors, will be invaluable as he works to safeguard firms from these persistent dangers. David Vigneault's tenure at CSIS was fraught with challenges, especially concerning foreign interference. Notably, his leadership saw efforts to counteract alleged attempts by China to influence Canadian affairs, a claim Beijing has constantly denied. Earlier this year, an official probe found evidence of such interference in Canada's last 2 federal elections, though it concluded that the election results were not impacted. Comparing this to other similarly high-profile transitions, it is not uncommon for former intelligence officials to move into significant roles within the private sector. The expertise they bring from their government service is highly sought after by private firms aiming to protect against complex security threats. As with many businesses, private security companies use the clout of their members to help close major deals. The term rainmaker is often used when referring to individuals with Mr. Vigneault's credentials, as he will likely be asked to help land some very lucrative contracts. In the announcement, Strider CEO Greg Levesque highlighted Vigneault's extensive experience, stating, "His experience leading at the highest levels of the global intelligence community will be invaluable to both Strider and our customers around the world as we pursue our mission." This statement is echoed across the intelligence community, where Vigneault is recognized for his leadership and strategic insights. From my professional perspective, David Vigneault's move underscores a broader trend of private security companies, increasingly seeking the expertise of former intelligence officials to navigate the landscape filled with sophisticated and evolving threats. His transition to Strider is not just a career, it's a strategic enhancement for the firm, leveraging the vast experience to bolster their defenses against state-sponsored espionage and cyber threats. To wrap up, David Vigneault's move from CSIS to Strider Technologies is a noteworthy development in the intelligence and security sector. It highlights the ongoing importance of public sector collaboration in addressing global security threats. As we look to the future, it will be interesting to see how Vigneault's expertise influences Strider strategies and the broader implications for national and corporate security. As a former intelligence officer who had the opportunity to work for David, I wish him the very best in his new endeavors. In our next story, we shift our attention to a fascinating and rather unusual case of espionage that has emerged in Poland. Our focus is on the recent article entitled Belarusian Spy-Nude Model Charged with Espionage in Poland. This case involves Daria Ostapenko, a Belarusian nude model accused of spying on Belarusian opposition groups for the Belarusian State Security Committee, also known as the KGB. Let's dive into the details and implications of this story. Daria Ostapenko, who reportedly made her living by selling nude photos online, was charged with espionage in Warsaw. She was arrested in December of 2023 on suspicion of participating in the activities of the Belarusian intelligence service. According to the Polish National Prosecutor's Office, Ostapenko provided the KGB with detailed information about activities, structure, and financing of organizations supporting the Belarusian opposition. This information was allegedly used by the Belarusian authorities to spread political propaganda, portraying the Belarusian opposition as extremist and accusing Poland of supporting terrorist organizations. From an intelligence perspective, this case highlights the varied and often unconventional means by which espionage can be conducted. The use of a nude model to infiltrate opposition groups is a stark reminder of the lengths to which intelligence services will go to gather information and the vulnerabilities that can be exploited. The idea of the femme fatale or honeypot is not new to the world of espionage. Use of feminine wiles to accomplish covert operations is biblical in its history. Ostapenko's involvement in the Belarusian opposition and her role as a coordinator during the Tell the Truth campaign indicate her deep integration into the opposition's activities. The Belarusian presidential election in 2020 and subsequent crackdowns on protesters have led many Belarusians to seek refuge in Poland. This context is crucial in understanding the significance of Ostapenko's espionage activities and the broader geopolitical tensions between Belarus and Poland. Comparing this to other espionage cases, it's clear that individuals with seemingly ordinary or non-traditional backgrounds can become involved in intelligence operations, often under the coercion or due to personal vulnerabilities. Ostapenko's work as a model on OnlyFans made her susceptible to coercion by the KGB, reflecting how personal circumstances can be exploited for intelligence purposes. While the article does not provide direct expert quotes, the information provided by the Polish National Prosecutor's Office offers a detailed account of Ostapenko's activities and their implications. From the professional perspective, Ostapenko's case underscores the importance of robust counterintelligence measures, especially in countries that are havens for political dissidents. The ease with which she infiltrated opposition groups and passed information to the KGB is a significant concern for national security. The case of Daria Ostapenko serves as a vivid example of the unconventional methods used in modern espionage and the ongoing threats posed by state-sponsored intelligence activities. As we move forward, it's essential to remain vigilant and aware of the diverse ways in which espionage can manifest. We now turn our attention into a concerning story developing in France that has raised eyebrows in the intelligence community. The article titled, After French Rail Sabotage, Some See Signs of a Murky Ultra-Left, from the New York Times. This article sheds light on the recent arson attacks on France's high-speed train lines just before the Paris Olympics. Let's unpack this and explore the implications on national security. Last month, coordinated arson attacks targeted France's high-speed train lines, disrupting rail travel for hundreds of thousands of travelers just before the Olympic Games opening ceremony. Despite the scale of the sabotage, there has been no arrest and no suspects have been publicly identified. This lack of clear answers leaves many questions unanswered. From an intelligence perspective, the incident is significant. Railway sabotage is a classic tactic for groups aiming to disrupt state functions, and it appears that this attack fits that pattern. French authorities have pointed to ultra-left anti-capitalist groups as potential suspects. These groups are known for their insurrectorial anarchist views and their preference for actions that disrupt state operations without seeking notoriety. To provide some context, France's Interior Minister, Gerard Darmanin, emphasized that rail sabotage is a traditional method of action for these ultra-left groups. France's domestic intelligence agency corroborates this, noting that arson is a preferred modus operandi for these movements, often targeting energy and telecommunications infrastructures. This isn't an isolated incident. Similar tactics have been observed in other parts of Europe, though the numbers of arrests for left-wing and anarchist extremist offenses remains low. According to Europol, these groups, while active, often evade law enforcement, making such cases notoriously difficult to solve. The article highlights expert opinions, including statements from France and French officials and Europol. Gerard Darmanin's remarks underscore the historical context of such sabotage in France. Meanwhile, Europol's report from last year provides a broader European perspective, indicating that left-wing and anarchist extremist offenses are relatively common but persistent. From my personal analysis, this incident suggests a coordinated effort by a group or groups with substantial operational capability and motivation to disrupt major events. The timing just before the Olympics indicates a strategic choice aimed at maximizing disruption and media coverage. In summary, the recent sabotage of France's high-speed train lines highlights ongoing threats from ultra-left groups and the challenges they pose to national security. While the immediate focus has been on the Olympics, the broader implications for infrastructure security and counterterrorism efforts cannot be ignored. Looking ahead, it's crucial for intelligence and law enforcement agencies to enhance their capabilities in identifying and preempting such threats from the far left as well as the right. In intelligence and national security, there's never a lack of potential threat actors to be aware of and hopefully disrupt. In our next article, we're discussing a significant and rather shocking development in international relations and espionage. The article, entitled "Kremlin Admits Vadim Krashkov is a Russian state assassin" from The Guardian, reveals some eye-opening admissions from the Kremlin. Let's dive into the details and implications of this revelation. The Kremlin has admitted that Vadim Krashkov, recently freed from Germany in a historic prisoner swap, is a serving officer of the Federal Security Service of Russian Federation, or the FSB. This admission essentially confirms that his 2019 murder of a Chechen exile in Berlin was a state-ordered hit. Interestingly, it was also hinted that Krashkov is linked to Vladimir Putin's personal guard. Krashkov was among 8 Russians released from Western jails and returned to Moscow as part of the complex exchange deal. In return, 16 individuals, including US reporter Evan Gershkovich and several Russian opposition politicians, were freed from Russian custody. According to the sources, Putin was maniacal about securing Krashkov's return, underscoring the importance of this operative to the Kremlin. This is the first time the Kremlin has openly admitted that one of its serving operatives is behind a murder on foreign soil. Historically, Moscow has denied involvement in similar incidences, such as the poisoning of Alexander Litvinenko in London in 2006 and the attempted murder of Sergei Skripal in Salisbury in 2018, as well as multiple hits on Chechen exiles in Istanbul. For more insight into these intelligence-driven assassinations, check out my YouTube videos entitled "Killer Spies: The Dark Side of Intelligence." The 2019 murder of Zelinkmin Kangoshvili in Berlin was initially met with denial from the Kremlin. However, in an interview earlier this year, Putin referred to Krashkov as a patriot who had liquidated a bandit. The recent admission goes a long way in clarifying the Kremlin's stance and tactics in dealing with perceived enemies abroad. Putin's spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, confirmed that Krashkov is an FSB employee and had served with some of the people working in the president's security detail. This confirmation, coupled with the red carpet treatment Krashkov and other returnees received in their return to Moscow, paints a clear picture of how Kremlin values its operatives. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz defended the prisoner swap as a duty to protect lives despite the high price of releasing Krashkov. Scholz emphasized the humanitarian grounds for the decision given the lives that were at stake. Meanwhile, opposition voices like Ilya Yashin have criticized the swap, suggesting it encourages Putin to take more hostages. The admission by the Kremlin regarding Vadim Krashkov's status as a state assassin marks a significant moment in international relations and espionage. This case highlights the lengths to which the Kremlin will go to protect its operatives and the complex moral and political decisions faced by Western governments in such situations. The Kremlin has obviously demonstrated a morbid cheekiness in their veiled attempt to obfuscate the assassinations of state enemies outside of Russia. This is meant to send a clear message to any and all Russian dissidents in regard to how the Kremlin intends to treat their actions. As we move forward, it is crucial to monitor the potential implications of this admission on future international relations and espionage activities. We now travel to East Africa to discuss a tragic and alarming event from Mogadishu, Somalia. In an article entitled "At least 37 Killed in Terrorist Attack on Popular Mogadishu Beach" from The Guardian, this report is on a devastating suicide bombing and gun attack at Lido Beach. Let's dive into the details and the implications of this attack. On Friday night, a suicide bomber and gunman targeted Lido Beach, a popular beachfront in Mogadishu, killing at least 37 people and injuring over 200. The attack happened when the beach was bustling with residents enjoying their evening. The al-Qaeda-linked group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for this heinous act. The attack began with a suicide bomber detonating his device on the beach, followed by gunmen storming the area. Somali police and witnesses described the scene of chaos and terror as people ran for their lives. Government forces eventually neutralized the attacker after a gunfight. Al-Shabaab has been a persistent threat in Somalia since 2007, frequently targeting civilians and government institutions. The group aims to overthrow the Somali government and impose its strict interpretation of Islamic law. This attack at Lido Beach is one of the deadliest in Mogadishu this year, highlighting the ongoing security challenges in the region. The Lido Beach area, located in the affluent Abdiazi district, is known for its relative security. However, it has been targeted in the past, emphasizing that no area in Mogadishu is completely safe from such attacks. Somali President Hussein Sheikh Mohammed convened an emergency session of the country's security agencies to understand how the attack happened. Abdul Qadir Yusuf Abdulhani, the medical director of the Somali Sudanese Specialized Hospital, described the overwhelming influx of victims and the critical injuries sustained. Omar Hashi, the special presidential envoy for stabilization and civilian protection, expressed heartache over the attack, while Abdulrahman Abdishakar, a veteran MP from the former President Sharif Sheikh Ahmed, condemned the terrorist hostilities towards the Somali people. During my time as an intelligence officer, much of my focus was on counterterrorism investigations. The targeting of the Lido Beach by Al-Shabaab is in line with many terrorist organizations' aims to demonstrate that what is believed to be relatively safe is not. The attack on the Lido Beach in Mogadishu underscores the persistent threat posed by Al-Shabaab and the challenges faced by the Somali government in ensuring the safety of its citizens. This tragic event reminds us of the importance of vigilance and international cooperation in combating terrorism. Our thoughts are with the victims and their families during this difficult time. In our next story, we stick with the topic of terrorism but return home to Canada. We're talking about the recent and concerning incident in Toronto, where arrests have raised serious questions about Canada's security screening process. The article, "Toronto Terror Arrests Raise Questions About Security Screening" from Global News, outlines the troubling details. Let's explore what happened and its implications. Canadian authorities have arrested Ahmed Faoud Mustafa El-Didi, 62, and his son Mustafa, 26, on terrorist-related charges. As I've discussed in my last podcast, the arrest took place at a hotel north of Toronto where they were allegedly preparing to carry out a terrorist attack for ISIS. Police seized a machete and an axe from the scene. Ahmed El-Didi has been charged with aggravated assault for ISIS related to a 2015 incident outside of Canada where a video purportedly shows him dismembering a prisoner with a sword. The RCMP stated that their arrest disrupted an imminent terrorist attack in Toronto, and both have been charged with multiple terrorism offenses related to ISIS. This case raises significant concerns about Canada's immigration and security screening processes. Despite Ahmed El-Didi's alleged involvement with ISIS in 2015, he was able to immigrate to Canada after the execution video was released. The Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, has not provided specific details on why his past was not detected during the screening. This incident highlights potential gaps in the system. Kelly Sundenberg, a professor at Calgary's Mount Royal University, criticized the security screening process as inadequate and under-resourced, calling it a horrible failure. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre demanded answers from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government on how an alleged ISIS terrorist managed to immigrate to Canada and gain citizenship. The CBSA stated that security screenings involve collaboration with various agencies such as the RCMP and CSIS. However, the failure to detect El-Didi's past affiliations has brought the process into question. If found guilty, Mustafa El-Didi, who is not a Canadian citizen, could face deportation, while Ahmed El-Didi, could potentially have his citizenship revoked, even if it's proven he misrepresented his past during immigration. Misrepresentation on a refugee, permanent resident, or citizen application is grounds for dismissal or revocation of status. However, this is rarely ever the outcome. Canada's push for increased immigration numbers has placed security screening officers in CBSA, Immigration Refugee Board, and the service beyond their limits, and as a result, individuals who pose a threat to national security of Canada are entering the country and acquiring status. This case underscores the critical importance of rigorous screening security and immigration processes to prevent individuals with dangerous pasts from entering the country. The arrests in Toronto have disrupted a potential terrorist attack, but also reveals vulnerabilities that need to be addressed to ensure the safety and security of Canadian citizens. It is my hope that the federal government will focus more attention, resources, and funding to security screening programs to help prevent future incidents like this one from happening. We now move on to Austria, where we're delving into a significant security incident that unfolded in Vienna. I'm of course speaking of the reports of two men who were arrested in connection with planning terrorist attack targeting major events, including Taylor Swift concerts. Authorities have managed to avert the threat, however, the shows have been cancelled. The key development here is the arrest of the two individuals, one of whom is 19 years old and an alleged ISIS sympathizer. These men were reportedly radicalized online and have devised specific plans to execute their attack. When apprehended, authorities found chemical substances which might have been used to build a bomb. This discovery underscores the growing threat of online radicalization and the meticulous planning that can be accompanying such threats. From an intelligence perspective, the situation highlights the critical importance of monitoring online spaces where radicalization occurs. The swift action of Austrian authorities demonstrates effective counterterrorism measures and underscores the need for vigilance in tracking and disrupting extremist plot. The fact that the concerts were cancelled shows that although this was well managed, preserving public safety while maintaining normalcy is a high priority. This incident fits into a broader pattern of radicalization when individuals are targeted as high-profile events to maximize the impact and media attention. Similar cases have occurred globally where planned attacks on public events have been thwarted throughout intelligence and law enforcement efforts. The use of online platforms for radicalization and planning is a recurring theme in recent terrorism cases, emphasizing the need for robust cyber intelligence and counter-radicalization strategies. The article notes that both arrested men had become radicalized through the internet, a point echoed by security experts. Their ability to access and use online resources for radicalization and attack planning is a growing concern. My professional analysis reinforces the need for enhanced monitoring of online activities and improved intelligence sharing practices to prevent such incidences. The fact that authorities managed to disrupt this plot before it could come to fruition highlights the effectiveness of the counterterrorism protocols. However, to summarize, the arrest of two men in Vienna and the prevention of their attacks is a significant development in counterterrorism efforts. The ongoing concerts and public venues can continue with heightened security, however, reflecting a successful intervention in regards to this type of attack is always a necessity. As we move forward, it is crucial to remain aware of the evolving threats in the digital age and the importance of vigilance and preparedness. This week's final story centers on a concerning report that has emerged out of Switzerland. We're discussing an article titled Canadian North Korean Expert Detained in Switzerland on Espionage Charges, which was published on August 8, 2024. This report reveals that a former UN official from Canada, who is now a North Korean specialist, has been detained on charges of spying, with suspicions that he was likely working for China. The crux of this story lies in the arrest of a Canadian expert and a former UN official, now working as a North Korean specialist. According to the investigation, he was detained in Switzerland, where he is suspected of espionage, likely for China. This individual, whose name has not been released, had frequently traveled to China for his work as an environmental consultant, raising suspicions about his activities. From an intelligence perspective, this case is a prime example of the complexities and dangers that professionals in sensitive fields face, particularly when dealing with geographically charged regions like North Korea and China. It underscores the blurred lines between legitimate academic or consulting work and intelligence gathering activities, which can often put individuals in precarious situations. To understand the gravity of the situation, it's essential to consider the broader context. This isn't the first time we've seen allegations of espionage involving North Korea or China. In recent years, both countries have been involved in numerous cases of intelligence operations targeting foreign nationals, particularly those with expertise or access to sensitive information. This event also reflects the ongoing tensions between Western nations and China, where espionage and counterintelligence activities have ramped up significantly. Comparatively, similar cases have occurred in the past where individuals with ties to sensitive geographical areas have been accused of espionage, often resulting in lengthy investigations and severe legal consequences. This case also highlights Switzerland's role as a neutral ground, but a hotbed for espionage due to its international significance. While the article does not provide specific quotes from any experts, the involvement of renowned media outlets like Der Spiegel, Temenita, and NK News adds credibility to the weight of the allegations. This incident is another example of how Canadian citizens, co-opted to work for foreign intelligence agencies, have implications for international relations. Canada and Canadians are seen as viable targets for foreign enemy states that are willing to procure their efforts to spy against Canada and other nation states that these foreign enemies have a vested interest in. Previous examples of Canadian spying for foreign governments are unfortunately more and more prevalent in the news. Some recent examples include the husband and wife team involved in the spying case at the National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg. The freedom of movement of Canadians and the acceptance of Canadian passports globally are just a few reasons why foreign enemy states look to recruit Canadian citizens to spy for them. This specific case raises critical questions about the extent of Chinese espionage operations and the vulnerabilities that professionals, even those working in seemingly unrelated fields like environmental consulting, may face. The detention of a Canadian North Korean expert in Switzerland on espionage charges is yet another example and a reminder of the high-risk and high-stakes world of international espionage. As this investigation unfolds, we may see further revelations that could have significant implications for global security and diplomatic relations. Canada's intelligence community must continue to be cognizant of the recruitment of Canadian professionals who have access to information which enemy foreign states are looking to garner. Additionally, Canadian citizens must be aware of the subtle and sometimes not so subtle recruitment tactics of foreign intelligence agencies. If you feel you have been approached by a representative of a foreign government for potential recruitment purposes, contact the Canadian Security Intelligence Services with your concerns.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up. We hope our insights and analysis have been both informative and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or just ask your smart speaker to play it, so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed the content, please leave a comment, give us a rating, and share it with others. Your feedback and support are essential in helping us continue to deliver high-quality, insightful content. You can also support the show by becoming a supporter at https://buymeacoffee.com/GIKN or buzzsprout.com/2336717/support. Your contributions are greatly appreciated and help ensure we can keep bringing you these important insights. Stay tuned for more in-depth discussions and analysis in our next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.